There is a moment, and you know exactly the one, when someone looks at you with that familiar flatness in their eyes, that subtle smirk underneath their words, that tone designed to make you feel small without ever raising their voice, and something inside you tightens. Your chest goes hollow, your throat closes around words you cannot find, and a part of you that has been silenced for years quietly asks why this keeps happening to you. Why you keep being the one who has to manage their mood, soften your truth, shrink your needs, apologize for reactions you did not choose, and explain yourself to someone who never truly intended to understand you in the first place. If that moment lives inside your body right now, if you can feel it in your shoulders, in your jaw, in the pit of your stomach as you read this, I want you to stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not another lecture about toxic people. It is a complete reordering of how you respond, how you speak, how you stand inside your own skin when someone tries to make you doubt your reality. And by the time these words finish moving through you, the next disrespectful comment aimed at you will not land the way it used to, because you will no longer be standing where it was thrown. Before we go deeper, I want you to do one quiet thing for yourself, not for me, not for any channel, but for the version of you who has been searching for clarity for a long time. Subscribe. Not because it is expected, but because something brought you here tonight, in this exact emotional state, looking for exactly this kind of guidance. And the part of you that is finally ready to stop being the emotional caretaker for people who treat your softness as a resource deserves a steady voice she can return to whenever the fog rolls back in. Subscribing is a small act of self-loyalty. It is you telling yourself that you are no longer going to figure this out alone in the middle of the night, scrolling, doubting, wondering if you are the problem. You are not the problem. You never were. And now we begin. To understand why certain words completely dismantle the dynamic, you have to first understand what is actually happening when a person with narcissistic patterns disrespects you. It is not a misunderstanding, it is not poor communication, and it is not them having a bad day. Disrespect in this kind of relationship is functional. It is a tool, it has a purpose. The purpose is to keep you slightly off balance, slightly unsure, slightly more focused on them than on yourself. Because the moment you become fully centered in your own reality, their leverage disappears. Every cutting remark, every cold silence, every public jab disguised as a joke, every flip of the conversation back onto your reaction rather than their behavior is a small mechanism designed to recalibrate the power inside the room. They are not arguing with you, they are managing you. And once you understand that disrespect is a regulation strategy for someone who cannot tolerate equality, you stop trying to win the conversation. You stop trying to explain. You stop trying to make them see you because they see you perfectly well. They simply cannot afford to acknowledge what they see. This is the first internal shift, and it has to happen before any words leave your mouth. Because if you speak from the wounded place, from the place that still wants them to finally understand, you will lose every exchange, not because you are weak, but because you are speaking a language of repair to someone fluent only in control. So the words you are about to learn are not magic. They are not tricks. They are not clever comebacks. They are precise verbal expressions of an internal posture that says, I am no longer available for this. And that posture, that quiet, immovable knowing, is what actually changes everything. The first thing you say, and you say it slowly, without emotion, without urgency, without explanation, is that you are not going to discuss this with me in this tone. You do not raise your voice. You do not justify why. You do not list examples. You simply name the condition under which you are willing to remain in the conversation, and then you become silent. The silence is not punishment. It is not the silent treatment. It is not a strategy. It is simply the natural consequence of you having stated a boundary and meaning it. Most people who have been emotionally conditioned by a narcissistic dynamic feel an unbearable urge in that silence to fill it, to soften it, to add a qualifier, to reassure the other person that you still love them, still respect them, still want connection. Do not fill it. The silence is where your nervous system learns that you can survive their displeasure. The silence is where your inner authority is rebuilt one breath at a time. And what you will notice, perhaps for the first time, is that they do not know what to do with a person who is not afraid of the quiet. They will escalate, they will provoke, they will accuse you of being cold, distant, dramatic, difficult, because the disruption of the familiar pattern is intolerable to them. Hold steady. You are not being cruel. You are being clear. The second thing you say when they attempt to twist your words, rewrite the moment, or accuse you of being too sensitive is that you remember what happened and you trust your own memory. That is it. You do not argue the facts. You do not pull up evidence. You do not relitigate the past 3 years of incidents. You simply state, with the calm of someone who has stopped auditioning for their own reality, that you remember and that you trust yourself. This sentence is devastating to a person who has relied on your self-doubt as their primary tool of influence, because it removes the doorway they have always walked through. They cannot enter your mind anymore. They cannot rearrange your perceptions. They cannot make you the unstable one. And the moment you stop performing certainty for them and simply embody it for yourself, the entire architecture of the dynamic begins to crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, internally, in the place where it actually matters. The third thing you say, when they push, when they prod, when they try to drag you back into the emotional swamp where they win every exchange because they do not play by the same rules, is that this conversation is over for now. Not forever, not dramatically, just for now. And then you leave the room, leave the call, leave the thread, leave the situation. You do not slam doors. You do not deliver speeches. You do not announce your departure with theatrical finality. You simply remove your presence from a space that has become unsafe for your nervous system, because your nervous system is not a debate stage. It is the home you live inside every single day, and you are no longer going to let people set fires in your living room and call it a conversation. I want you to pause here for a moment, because what I am describing is not just a set of phrases, it is a complete reorientation of who has access to your inner world. And for many of you, this will feel unfamiliar, almost foreign, because you have spent so long believing that love means availability, that maturity means absorbing the other person's behavior, that being a good partner or child or sibling or friend means making yourself emotionally accessible no matter how you are being treated. That is not love. That is not maturity. That is a survival pattern you developed long before you ever met this person, and they simply walked into a door that was already open. The work now is not to become harder, colder, or more guarded in some performative way. The work is to become so deeply rooted in your own reality that disrespect cannot find a foothold inside you. This is the moment I want to speak directly to the part of you that has been quietly exhausted for a very long time. If anything in these words is reaching the place inside you that has been waiting to be reached, subscribe. Not as a transaction, but as a marker. A small internal marker that says, tonight something shifted, and I am no longer willing to keep losing myself in dynamics that were never designed to hold me with care. You are allowed to give yourself that. You are allowed to invest in your own restoration. You have spent years investing in the emotional regulation of people who would not lift a finger for yours. Turn some of that attention back toward yourself now. Now let us go deeper, because the words alone will not protect you if your nervous system still floods every time they look at you a certain way. The reason these phrases work is because they require you to remain regulated while delivering them. If your voice shakes, if your eyes well up, if your hands tremble, the words still matter, but the dynamic does not shift fully because the person across from you reads your body, not your sentences. They have been reading your body for years. They know exactly which micro-expression means you are about to cave, which breath means you are about to apologize, which silence means you are about to come back and smooth things over. So, part of the work is teaching your body that you are safe to hold a boundary, that the discomfort of their reaction is not the same as danger, that their disappointment in you is not a wound. It is simply information about them, not a verdict on you. You do this by breathing slower than feels natural. You do this by softening your shoulders when every instinct says to brace. You do this by keeping your feet flat on the ground, your jaw unclenched, your eyes steady, your voice low. The lower your voice goes, the more authority it carries, because high-pitched defensive speech signals to their nervous system that they are still in control. A low, slow, almost gentle delivery signals something they have never encountered in you before, which is that you are no longer afraid of the outcome. And when you are no longer afraid of the outcome, you cannot be manipulated by the threat of it. There is another phrase that belongs in your repertoire, and you use it when they attempt to provoke you in front of others, when they make the cutting joke at the dinner table, when they roll their eyes while you are speaking, when they sigh loudly to communicate contempt without having to defend it. You look at them calmly and you say that you are not going to pretend that did not happen. You do not explain what it was. You do not name the behavior in front of everyone. You simply refuse to participate in the social fiction that nothing just occurred. This is powerful because narcissistic dynamics rely heavily on plausible deniability. They depend on you smoothing things over publicly so the behavior can be denied privately. The moment you stop smoothing, the behavior becomes visible, and visibility is something they cannot tolerate because their entire image depends on the gap between how they appear and how they actually treat you. You are not exposing them. You are simply no longer concealing them. There is a difference, and that difference is where your power lives. Now I want to address something that almost no one talks about, which is the grief. Because as you begin to use these words, as you begin to hold your ground, as you begin to feel your spine return to your body, you will also feel a sorrow you did not expect. You will grieve the version of the relationship you hoped existed. You will grieve the years you spent trying. You will grieve the person you thought they were, and the person you had to become to keep the peace. This grief is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are finally telling yourself the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is the ground you can finally stand on. Lies, no matter how comfortable, are quicksand. Truth, no matter how painful, is solid earth. You are choosing solid earth now. Stay with the grief when it comes. Do not rush past it. Do not numb it. Do not let anyone convince you that healing should feel like immediate relief. Real healing often feels like exhaustion, like sadness, like a strange quiet where the chaos used to live. Let the quiet come. The quiet is where you meet yourself again, perhaps for the first time in years. As you continue to use these words, as you continue to refuse the bait, as you continue to leave conversations that violate your dignity, you will notice something else, and this is the part that almost no one warns you about. Some people in your life will not like the new version of you, not just the difficult person, other people. People who benefited from your over-functioning, your over-apologizing, your endless emotional generosity. They will say you have changed. They will say you have become cold. They will say you used to be so easygoing. Let them say it. You did change. You changed because the version of you they preferred was slowly dying, and you chose to live instead. There is no apology required for choosing to live. There is no explanation owed for choosing to stop bleeding in rooms full of people who pretended not to notice. The final phrase I want to leave with you, and this is the one that requires the most internal authority to deliver, is that you are not available for this anymore. Not this conversation, not this dynamic, not this version of the relationship. You are not declaring war. You are not issuing ultimatums. You are simply stating with the quiet certainty of someone who has finally stopped negotiating with their own degradation, that your participation in the pattern has ended. What they do with that information is not your responsibility. Whether they rage, whether they cry, whether they suddenly become charming again, whether they disappear, whether they return 6 months later with apologies they do not mean, None of it requires a response from you that betrays the ground you have just claimed. You hold the ground. You keep holding the ground. You hold it through the discomfort, through the loneliness, through the temptation to go back, because going back feels familiar, and familiarity feels like safety, even when it is not. Real safety is the version of you that no longer abandons herself the moment someone raises their voice or lowers their gaze. Real safety is the version of you that can sit alone in a room and feel whole. Real safety is the version of you that walks into the next interaction with this person carrying an internal stillness they cannot disturb, because you are no longer waiting for them to give you something they were never capable of giving. You are the